welcome to another interview in our series in favor to ecocide law. In this opportunity, we will interview our friend Paulo Busse from Brazil. He is a very prominent lawyer with many experience along the years, and he was one of the person that draft the bill of ecocide law in his country. So very welcome, Paulo, and thank you for being with us. And let me start to given the first question regarding why you decided to study for law, and at what moment, if you remember, you decided to dedicate your career to environmental issues.
Thanks for having me, Rodrigo. It's a great honor to be here. And I would say that I've always had a very special relationship with nature since very early in my life. In the very beginning of my life, I was in doubt between two professions. One was law, and the other one was, quite interestingly, environmental engineering. And I decided for law, but I had that door open for me. And what happened then, right before I organized my first law firm, is that I was invited, I was indicated for Greenpeace Brazil, and I became a lawyer, a criminal lawyer for the activists being arrested in Greenpeace's direct actions. And it is over 20 years now. I mean, I still am one of Greenpeace's lawyers. And because of that experience with Greenpeace, I began working with other organizations like Observatório do Clima and many others, environmental, human rights organizations in my country. So since very early in my life, I developed a very strong relationship with environmental protection, especially of the Amazon region. And now, more recently, the Cerrado biome as well. So it's been an essential part of my life, the work I do. Now, not only as a criminal lawyer, as in the beginning, but also as an environmental, because I became an environmental lawyer because of my relationship with organizations like Greenpeace, and also a human rights lawyer. So in a nutshell, that's me. So ecocide is a consequence of all that, for sure.
Well, the next question, Paulo, is what could you define ecocide? You know, there exists an independent expert panel for the legal definition of ecocide, but probably to make this bill of law, bill of ecocide law, you have to make some adaptations to this definition, or how could this definition run in your legislation, in internal legislation?
Well, this is a very interesting question because we work with this definition, but for the indigenous peoples, I work with indigenous peoples protection in my country for quite a long time. For them, ecocide is a very common, very, how can I say, current term. They use it all the time. They feel they are being victims of ecocide for quite a long time, much more than us who live in the south of Brazil. For us, actually, you have to teach people about what's ecocide, the importance of having a crime called ecocide with more serious penalties and legal consequences. But for the indigenous and all traditional populations living in the Amazon, indigenous and non-indigenous, ecocide is like part of their lives. They kind of are born knowing what's like being victims of ecocide, which is something even mind-blowing for us, to perceive that. So my question is, why don't we have a crime called ecocide yet in a country like Brazil, where people feel that ecocide is a part of their lives already. This is very interesting. So what we need is to perhaps being more open and listen to these people more, because they are asking, even without asking, they are asking for that, the recognition by state forces that there is a situation, a very serious situation, not yet treated by the Brazilian law.
Well, thank you, Paulo. Well, we are here in around COP16, Biodiversity COP16 in Cali, and tomorrow you will speak in an event from Stop Ecocide International with other prominent lawyer from the Latinas countries, Latin America's countries. So, what do you think about this kind of events or this kind of COPs? Because the next year we will have a climate COP in your country, in the Amazon, precisely in the Amazon, where the situation is very difficult right now. So, what do you think? This kind of event could help in some way? Is useful to discuss about those topics?
Well, I always think these events are very important because the environment, as I always say, has no map. There is no map for the environment. There is no boundaries between countries. These divisions are artificial. So the environment is or should be an international agenda for all of us. So these international conferences, in my opinion, are opportunities for all representatives of all countries, to develop this new awareness that we so, I would say, desperately need now, to push our initiatives like ecocide forward. That said, I am not very optimistic neither about this meeting here in Colombia nor about next year's meeting in Brazil, because we know the results of all the previous international conferences, such as these COPs. But I think that in these events we have great opportunities, to meet our partners and allies in other countries, to develop common initiatives and agendas and push forward some specific initiatives. I am not optimistic, especially about, the official side of the conference, which is the meetings between, the official delegations of the countries. But I'm much more optimistic about the meetings between civil society representatives and organizations such as ours. I am here meeting you. We are partners, Stop Ecocide, but I'm also representing organizations like the Brazilian Observatório do Clima here, having specific meetings to deal with specific topics. In this dimension, I am more optimistic that we could, through the development of these agendas in the civil society, develop certain initiatives. I think this is important.
Well, another question is that you published recently an article regarding the Amazon and what happened over there, and initiative, a legal initiative to file a case in the International Criminal Court. Please tell us about this important topic.
So the article deals with actually a communication that we did on behalf of Greenpeace Brazil, Climate Council, and Observatório do Clima to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, about crimes against humanity against the traditional populations, indigenous and non-indigenous, living in the Amazon in Brazil. That communication was filed in 2022 and covers all kinds of violence that took place in the previous 10 years. It is based in two reports. One, the yearly report of CPT, the Pastoral Commission on Land and People, and the other one, the reports, also yearly, I think, issued by Global Witness. This is a 5 years project that was finalized and presented in the last year of Bolsonaro administration, which was, you all know, particularly harmful to the environment and also to these traditional populations, and describes all kinds of violence you can imagine that are being perpetrated against these populations since, as we say, the very beginning of times, meaning the arrival of the Portuguese on our shores 500 years ago. One of the reasons we did that, of course, we are trying, to open an investigation at the ICC for them to come and investigate all these crimes. But one of the main reasons we did that was to raise awareness of everyone, including Brazilians, of what's going on in the Amazon since forever. Because we are still under this situation. We got rid of a great threat that we had, which was Bolsonaro and his harmful, terrible administration, but we are still having these human rights violations as before. So it is a kind of, I would say, ongoing and increasing, growing problem that we have. We have to do something about it. The forest is being the Amazon rainforest is being destroyed, while people are being killed and attacked in many other ways. And that specific part of violence against people, very few people know about. This is a reality, and this is a sad reality. We need to make it, visible for everyone. This is what's about my article, but also the communication to the ICC that we did.
So another question, Paulo, and thank you very much for your time, is regarding ecocide law. What do you think that if ecocide law will become a crime at the international level, and what do you think that could happen in your country if this ecocide bill of law become a crime in your internal legislation in Brazil?
Well, I think it would be of the utmost importance, Rodrigo, because to begin with, it would be a recognition by the authorities, international, at the ICC and Brazilian legal system, that the environment really matters. In Brazil, we have a law, which is a special law called Environmental Crimes Law, with more than 30 different crimes against the environment. But the problem is that the crimes are not encompassing enough. The penalties are too low, which means that at the end of the day, nobody goes to prison. Nobody is sentenced to prison time because of destroying the environment. This is in Brazil. So in a country like Brazil, that has one of the most important rainforests in the world, having a crime like ecocide would be absolutely important, because it would send a message not only to Brazilian society that environment matters and environmental destruction is a serious crime, but also to the entire world, because the country of the Amazon having a crime like ecocide would be a strong signal to all other countries that you have to take care of your environment. This is the symbolic aspect of the criminal law. And then there is a more practical side of it, which is adding to the prosecution a strong tool, to deal with environmental criminals in our country. We lack that strong tool. All that we have in this environmental crimes law is not enough. We need something more encompassing with a broader description, covering more serious and consequential situations, like the accidents in the two dams, Mariana and Brumadinho, now world famous, being processed and treated in English courts at the moment, but also all other kinds of destruction going on in the Amazon, in the hands of the authorities, the police and the prosecution, for them to be able to be in a position to really act against the criminals that currently don't have any serious reason to stop what they're doing, because the laws that we have now are not enough.
Paulo, I really believe that we are reaching a tipping point, a point of inflection in human history. One point of inflection could be after the Second World War. Humanity take a conscience of the importance to respect the others. So human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights come from there. Nuremberg trial come from there. The long process to build the International Criminal Court also come from there. United Nations was created after the Second World War. So this was an important point of inflection in human history. And I really believe that we are reaching another point of inflection, another tipping point. So what is your reflection about this? Do the lawyers have to get involved in some way to help to create an international infrastructure to protect the environment, because it's a very urgent situation, I think. What do you think about this?
Well, Rodrigo, this is also a very good question. I think that to begin with, our national systems of law are in crisis because of issues like environmental protection. As I said in the beginning, I don't believe in pretty much in sovereignty maps and boundaries in themes like the environment, environmental protection, the climate balance. There is no map in these issues, So answering to your question now, I totally believe in the importance of lawyers from different countries unite in international events, assemblies, groups, partnerships for common goals in these issues. The environmental protection and the climate change issues so desperately needed now. I mean, it's not only a question of raising awareness in civil society. It's now especially a question of raising awareness inside legal groups and associations in each country. But again, if, for instance, only Brazil start doing something really, in favor of the environment. Now we have an opportunity with President Lula and Minister Marina Silva in Brazil, but it's not enough. It will be not enough if only Brazil rises and begins doing something. It takes all countries doing their part together. And not only officials in the countries, but also members of civil society, also professionals like lawyers coming together in special groups, in thematic groups, doing the same thing, So it is essential that we lawyers unite with other nationals and begin an international movement, as we are doing here now, it will be essential, you know, in my opinion.
For a long time, many people have said that the Amazon is a lung of the of planet, and the other lung could be in Africa, probably in the Congo. But clearly, the Amazon could be considered a lung of the world. So the special protection, especially in Brazil, because the Amazon cover another countries, Ecuador, Colombia, here in Colombia, and many other countries. But it's the special preoccupation, what happened over there. And for a long time, I think some president of your country has said something like, well, the Amazon is under our sovereign. So we do, especially as one president, say something like, the Amazon is us, belong to us. We decided what happened with the Amazon. So I can perceive a tension between, of course, the sovereignty, but in other terms, what happened with the rest of the countries or the rest of the people that want to protect this special place in the world, a special place to the health of the world. So, what can you think about this tension?
Well, as a Brazilian, I would say, Rodrigo, that whoever owns rainforests like the Brazilian Amazon, the Congo rainforest, or the Indonesian main rainforest has a special responsibility for all humanity, for all the planets, you know. I can't imagine a situation where, hypothetically, a country uh, owning the bigger reservation of water in a situation where other countries are suffering from lack of water, can say that, you know, all this water here is mine. This is my jurisdiction. I do with all this water whatever I want. This is, in my opinion, a very old 20th century geopolitics kind of vision that doesn't belong to our times, you know. I really believe that we are better than this now. There is a growing awareness in all countries that the environment is uh, a human problem, as I said, has no maps, no boundaries, and belongs to everyone. And we, as living beings in the same planet, should take care of the environment and the climate all together. Otherwise, we will all perish. This is the reality, you know. We will all perish together if we don't assemble and make strong commitments to go as humanity in the same direction. We don't stand a chance, you know, because the reality is, science is telling us that for quite a long time. The reality is, we face an existential threat. We don't have much time to act. We are beginning to feel. We are beginning to feel and experience the consequences of environmental destruction in our cities. In my city, for instance, in São Paulo, sometimes you cannot not even breathe properly anymore because of smoke coming from the Amazon. You know, these situations are indeed really serious, and it should make us as humanity wake up for the problem. You know.
I would like to ask you what kind of message can you send to the young people, the young lawyers that wants to dedicate to this environmental issues or very close related human rights in this environmental issues.
Well, there is something I always say to the younger, that someone told me in the beginning of my life that I think was, you know, really important. I still carry with me as we speak, which is don't follow the money, don't go for the money, go for your ideals. Never forget your ideals, especially what made you choose a law to begin with. Maybe the answer is always there, you know. Well, maybe someone began already looking for money in the legal profession, but I think it's actually very rare. Normally, what attracts one to a profession is some sort of deep-rooted ideal. So don't forget his ideal, and if maybe you've lost it, recover it, because it's there, you know, it's with you. And I think it's this is my message to the younger generations, you know.
Well, to finalize this interview, as a final remarks, please tell us how can the people can reach you, if you have some website or you have a way to contact you, because probably the audience of this program could be interested in reach you in some way for some project, for some initiative.
Okay, my website is busseferreira, my surname.com.br. Everyone can access me through the website. And also, I would indicate the digital platform of our ICC communication, which tells a bit of everything that we live in terms of violence against peoples, as I explained in the Amazon, which is brazilcrimes.com. Everybody's invited to come and visit, and then let us know what they thought of what we did. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much again, Paulo, and thank you very much to all of you. And you are cordially invited to the next interview. See you then.